So today I'm back inside, as you guys can see. The last 2 days I gave y'all vlogs showing you guys the insights of my day-to-day life running errands in the city. On those vlogs that I made, it may seem like it was a quick 25-minute video, but those errands were taking me 2, 3, 4 hours. Like simple things in this city can take you so long. You end up getting on the train and you have to go 45 minutes one way, then 45 minutes back just to do something simple. But we're back inside, and today's topic is why I would rather invest my money in real estate in Kenya than in the US. And what I wanted to do is give you guys like a true insight as to what it costs to buy property here, buy a house, put tenants into it, and how that compares to what that same amount of money can do for me in Kenya. And as you guys know, I am a numbers guy. I'm gonna give you guys the meat, the sauce, everything. Now, this topic stemmed from a conversation that I had with my dad probably 2, 3 days ago. If you guys don't know, my dad lives in Kenya, and he's well aware of how real estate there works. He has a few apartments himself, not a few buildings. He has one building with a few units, and it's where my childhood home was. So, what we left as my childhood home had a little shamba, like a little garden in the front, big enough to build what's it called, apartments where it's 2 units. No, the bottom floor, the base, the footprint of the building is a 2 bedroom here and a 2 bedroom there, and then he's gonna build up. But overall, I was talking to my dad and explaining to him the opportunity that I see in the real estate there compared to here. Because a lot of people may ask themselves, like, why don't you just get into real estate in the US, ABCD? And I want to give you guys the actual numbers of what it takes to do that here and how it'll go a lot further for me in Kenya. So, the first place I wanted us to dive into is the cost of actually buying like a property here, buying a home to put a tenant in and go back to Kenya. Because, a lot of people may think that's a smarter decision. They may think that, oh, your dollar generating property in the US will take you a lot further than whatever you try to do in Kenya, which is false, right? Now, where do we start? The let me pull out my good old friend Chat GPT over here. So, what I wanted to first dive into is let's say I went through that pathway of first setting up something here. There's obviously a lot of barriers for me to first buy a property here in the US, right? One, a bank is not going to give me a loan to buy a home unless I have an income. As you guys know, I am currently unemployed. So that's out the window, which would mean that I would have to purchase that property outright, like cash, buy the whole property where I own it, and then put a tenant in there. But I still don't see that as a smart decision for these reasons. Number one, I asked ChatGPT what's the average price of a single family home in a modest suburb, because when you get into the US, things go crazy depending on where you are. Like, for example, the average price of a home in New York is showing up as $576,000. That's a lot of freaking money for even the average American. Most Americans aren't going to afford a $500,000 home, right? But the reason I asked for a modest suburb is to show what the average American has to prepare themselves financially to buy if they want to buy a home just for their family, let alone investment property, let alone trying to find tenants and grow this like portfolio, just simply buying a home for your family to live in. So when I asked that question to Mr. or Mrs. Chat GPT, the number that came up, where is this at, is 300,000 to 450,000. Now I'm going to show you guys what that is in Kenyan shillings. So 300,000 USD is 38 million 500, is that 38 million 850,000. let's call that 39 million, basically 40 million. And that's like low end because the actual number was 300 to 450 if I'm correct. Let me double check that. 300 to 450, okay? And 300 on its own is basically 40 million Kenyan shillings. 39, but we're going to call that 40. So, for you to buy this home, you need a down payment, okay? And the way it works here in the US, on average, you have to put down 20% of the down payment. Now, I went in and also asked ChatGPT, what is the average down payment of a home in the US? Basically going off that same thought process of if these are the average cost of homes, 300 to 450, that's currently right now. And we are on the high end of the market right now. Right now, things are very overpriced, but things are dropping. So, Chat told me that the average down payment here in the US currently is no, it says median. Okay, yeah. So average down payment that people are putting down right now is like $54,000, right? And I'm going to show you guys also what that is in Kenyan shillings. So we already confirmed low end of the market, finding a $300,000 home that's decent to put a tenant in and have cash flow is already almost 40 million Kenyan shillings. Now, just the down payment, right? Because that's what most people are going to actually chalk out of their pocket. Most people don't have 300,000 to hand a bank and be like, I mean, to hand somebody and say, give me the house, I own the title. Most people don't have that type of money in their pocket. So we're just going to go with the down payment. And I'm going to show you what the down payment can do for me in Kenya. So if 54,000, 54,000 USD is currently 6,993,993,000 Kenyan shillings. Let's call that 7 million Kenyan shillings, right? So we've already established homes here are expensive. I'm gonna need a job to get a loan for a home. I don't have a job. I don't plan on going back to tech. If everything works out right, I'll be in Kenya living off of my rentals. But just for me to put a down payment on that average 300,000, I'm going to spend 54,000 for the 20%. Now you don't have to put 20% down. You could put down less. But we're just going to go with just assuming Jimmy was trying to buy a home and he has the down payment ready of 20%, which is average $54,000. So, $54,000 is 7 million Kenyan shillings, right? Like I told you guys, I'm looking to go get into real estate on the peripheral parts of Nairobi. That 7 million alone can actually buy me a whole unit, like a whole apartment. You know these blocks that are coming up in Nairobi? That 7 million can get me into one of those if I go and buy off plan early, realistically. So just understand that alone. The down payment for me here in the US, 54,000, that's just for me to be able to get the loan and buy the home. Already can buy me just a whole unit in Kenya. But that's not my plans. My plans are to build, right? And the areas I'm looking at, the average price of land there is around 2.5 million Kenyan shillings, like 2 million to 3 million, right? And what is 2 million Kenyan shillings in USD? So two, one, two, three, one, two, three. 2 million Kenyan shillings is $15,000. Let's call it 2.5. I'm going to do 2.5 instead of 2. I'm going to put it right in the middle. So 2,500,000 in Kenya is just under $20,000 USD, right? And I explained to you guys that where I'm planning on building, because land is not that expensive. It's a good place to go into, and I already know what the rents in that area are bringing on average, right? Now, for you guys to understand, I'm not going into real estate in Kenya blindly. I would never do such a foolish thing, right? Like I already told you guys, my dad already has some apartments that he's building himself. He just needs to keep going up on different floors. So I have him as a source to understand like what I can expect to spend on foundation, what I can expect to spend on walling, on rebar, on all those different things. And also his I guess you, my my dad's wife's brother. I don't know who that would be to me. My uncle-in-law, my uncle or something. Yeah, I guess my uncle from my dad's side. My uncle from my dad's wife is a developer essentially. He's actually built apartments in the areas that I'm looking at. So he has a firsthand experience of working in those areas, and he was like the, I guess, lead contractor for some investors who were building buildings in that area. So they took me to an actual property and they showed me him and my dad, because you guys should understand the way I operate. Like if I tell people I'm doing something, it comes to a point where they realize Jimmy has his mindset. He's not changing his mind, so it's either you help him or get out his way, right? So my dad was like, "If you're serious about this land, I mean this Kenya thing, this Kenya relocation and actually getting into real estate, I'm gonna take your word for it." And my dad took me to that area where my uncle essentially had built already a building, and he showed me exactly what I should be building, what I can expect to spend, how much it would cost just for the land in that area, just for the foundation, how much it would cost for each floor to go up in walling and slab, and like to complete a full floor. He told me the pricing and everything. So I'm not going into this blindly, but I want to explain to you guys. And let me recap. Average home here, 300 to 450,000. Average down payment, 56,000 or 52,000. I can't remember the exact number, which was essentially 7 million or 40 million if you're buying the whole home in Kenyan shillings. But the area I plan on going into, average price of land is 2.5 M. And this is with confirmation from somebody who's already built there. I've seen the building. He's shown me everything of what it took to build that building. He's explained to me everything. So, just with the down payment that I would spend to get a home here, if I was to go to Kenya and with that same 7 million, let's say I'm just going with only 7 million Kenyan shillings, like that's where my crypto hits and that's all I have to work with, right? And let's say I don't have to pay taxes. So I'm working just with 7 million. From what my uncle explained to me essentially is that I'm going to spend around 2.5 to buy the land. I already told you guys 2.5 is $19,305. Let's call that $20,000 essentially. He told me that when he was building that building, right, the slab alone was pretty much just as much as the land, but just a little bit less. Like he spent another 2 million on just the slab, right? And this building is a 5-story building. So there's one, two, three, there's 5 floors, and then the ground floor. Each floor had 4 units, so that those 5 floors are 20 units, and the ground floor had two units in the back and 2 stores in the front. Most Kenyans know what I'm talking about of how those type of apartment buildings are built. So that building with a total of 22 units, because each floor has what's it called 4 units, and there's 5 floors, and then 2 in the back at the bottom floor. That building was generating around 250 to 265,000 Kenyan shillings. Okay, he told me the land is going to be 2.5. The slab for the first floor, I mean, just for the ground floor and to hold the building up, is going to be another 2 million Kenyan shillings. By the time I get one floor up, right? Let's say it just build the ground floor and plus one more floor, I would have spent a total of like close to what's it called? Close to 7 million Kenyan shillings, essentially. So that 7 million Kenyan shillings is me having 4 units. No, is me having 6 units, and the average price of rent in that area was around 12,000 Kenyan shillings. So if we do the math, let me pull up a calculator. 12,000 Kenyan shillings times 6 units, right? That's 72,000 Kenyan shillings. And that's not even counting the rent from the 2 storefronts. Because right now I'm just talking about just the apartments. 6 units, I'm only one floor up, and each unit is bringing me 12,000 Kenyan shillings. Okay? That just the apartments are bringing me 72,000. I think the storefronts rented for like 8,000 or 10,000. So you could call the two storefronts at the front another 20,000. Call that 92,000 Kenyan shillings just for me to build the first ground floor and one more floor up, right? So rewind. What I'm spending on just the down payment here in the US can already get me up to one floor where I own. I own this, meaning I'm not tied to a bank. I'm not paying a monthly mortgage. This is money out of my pocket that would have gone to a down payment. Instead, it goes to building me the first and the ground floor and the first floor. Okay? Now, let's talk about what these properties actually generate in the US. So you guys have an understanding of where we're at. We're gonna pause right there. Average home, 300 to 450. Average down payment, 56,000, 50 whatever, 7 million Kenyan shillings, right? That's just for me to get in. Here, if I'm spending that 50 whatever thousand, I still have a monthly mortgage of like 20 something $100 a month. Here in Kenya, I already own the ground floor, the land, and the first floor, and I have 6 units and two storefronts. That building is already bringing me 72,000 just from the apartments, and then another, let's call it 20,000 from the two storefronts, each one renting for like 8 to 10K. We're gonna call it 10K. So the average home here in the US, when people buy it and put a tenant in it, only brings you a few $100s a month in what's it called? In net profit after you pay your mortgage. You guys got to remember you don't own the home here. Here we've only put a down payment and we still have a loan to the bank of another, call it 200 and something thousand dollars, right? $250,000. So I asked ChatGPT after what is the average down payment? Hold on, that's the wrong tab. I asked ChatGPT how much does the average rental property profit after mortgage and tax payments on a monthly basis. This is important to understand. The reason I made sure to ask Chat after taxes and mortgage because that's the reality of what you will actually put back in your pocket because the rest of what you're generating here from your one tenant is going to the bank to pay your mortgage. And Chat told me that the average is around $100 to $300. And this is factual because I've looked into real estate here and I've looked into the realities of what a tenant would be paying for rent and how much what's it called the average mortgage would be if I was to buy such homes. And it was around the same thing that Chat told me, around $100 to $300. And you ask any real estate investor in the US, they'll tell you the same thing. Your home is gonna bring you maybe a few $100s a month, realistically, depending on the area. But we're going with what's it called? The average single family home in the average suburb. We're not going with what a unit in New York or a unit in LA or Miami would bring you. These are just average homes that you're gonna rent somewhere in the middle of nowhere in America. Not middle of nowhere, middle of somewhere that people actually live. You're only bringing in around $100 to $300 a month. Now, what is that in Kenyan shillings? Let's put it in the middle. Let's call it Matter of fact, let's put it at 250 to be fair. 250 USD is 32,000 Kenyan shillings. You guys hear that? I've put my down payment. I've bought the home and I have a tenant in there. I only have one tenant. And that building here or that one house is going to only bring me, let's call it 100 to 300. We went with 250 to be somewhere in the middle but higher end. And that's only bringing me 32,000 Kenyan shillings. We already did the math on what that same down payment will bring me in Kenya where I already own. And I didn't convert that for y'all, so let me do that right now. The 72,000, because we're just going to go with the apartment rentals. We're not going to count storefronts. We're just going to go with the apartments themselves. 72,000 Kenyan shillings from 6 units and each one going for like 12,000 Kenyan shillings is $555. You guys are already catching along. I hope you guys are following along with the math. Here in the US, I still have a loan to the bank. I'm only netting 100 to 300. We called it 250 to give you guys just on the higher end of what you will bring in. Here in Kenya, the same down payment. I own my land. I own the building, and I'm already bringing in $555. And this is going from an act like actual units I've seen with my eyes, actual units I've seen online of what they rent for in that area. That 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 8 to like 15,000 Kenyan shilling range is average of where I'm trying to build, and that's facts. I've seen the building. I've touched the building. I've seen tenants going in and out of those apartments that my dad took me to see with my uncle, and it's a reality, right? So we're gonna pause right there. In the U.S., I'm only generating 250 and I still have a loan to the bank and I only have one tenant. Here's the part that people don't understand. That one tenant leaving your home, what happens when that tenant leaves? All your income is gone because it's a single family. You don't have multiple units, you don't have multiple things. Here in Kenya, let's say I lose one unit and somebody moves out or even two people move out, I'm still bringing in more money than my single home here. And it's a less of a risk because here I'm relying on one tenant. That one tenant moving out, let's say it takes you 2 to 3 months, which is like average to put a new tenant in. Your home doesn't rent immediately. You have to put it back on the market. You have to go back in, fix up, paint up walls of anything that was broken. And here in the US, we build homes out of pretty much cardboard. In Kenya, we build out of mawe or bricks and actual stone. So the the damage that's done to homes here usually costs you quite a bit of money before you could put another tenant in. So just on that alone, for you guys to understand like the way I'm seeing this, and the reason I'm explaining this is because there might be other Kenyans who are watching this who live in the diaspora who are thinking of investing here, or there's Kenyans who are watching this from back in Kenya who may think that a dollar generating property in the US is a smarter investment than anything in Kenya, but the reality is right there in front of you of what it takes to actually get into a home here and what that down payment here can do for me just in Kenya. Just the down payment. And where I own, here I don't own. Here, if that tenant is gone for 3 months and I can't get another tenant, and now I have to scramble to find that $2,500, $2,600 a month, eventually I'm gonna lose my home. The bank is gonna come. They're gonna what's it called? Claim. They're gonna repossess the home, and you're gonna get foreclosed. That's the word. You get foreclosed on your mortgage. You lose your home. You lose the down payment because you still owe the bank money. So you're probably not gonna get that down payment back unless you could sell the home for more than it was worth. But that's just that right there. Let's now move on to the next step of understanding the full picture. The building that my dad and my uncle showed me in Kenya that my uncle built. My uncle was there from the process of buying land to breaking ground to laying, what's it called, the maram before you pour concrete for your ground floor slab and everything and pillars and all that. He was there for the whole process to the finishing of the building, and I guess he's kind of a property manager for those investors who built that building. He explained to me that building costed around 25 to 30 million Kenyan shillings to build that whole building. So I'm gonna give you guys what that is in USD. 25, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 25 million Kenyan shillings is 193,000 USD. Let's actually go on the high end to make sure that to account for any cost increases that may pop up along the way of building, right? Let's go with 30 million. 30 million is 231,000 USD. I already told you guys that the average home here that you're buying that can put an actual decent family in there, that's not in some hood, that's not in some bad place, you're gonna spend around that $300,000 mark. Back in the day, homes were going for two something to this. Even here in the U.S., I could definitely find a condo here for quarter of a million. To be quarter of a million is entry For me to get a studio here in New York City, that's just a studio like I live in. I'm spending a quarter million, and that's on the low end of the market for a decent one where you can move in and you don't have to renovate. I've already explained to you guys the building that was built in Kenya that I saw with my eyes and I touched and I know who's running it and everything. And he showed me pictures of the process of them building it. Costed no more than 30 million Kenyan shillings, and that 30 million Kenyan shillings is 231,000 USD. So that whole building costed less than what I would spend on a single studio condo here in New York City. But we're not talking about New York City. We're talking about single family homes. Okay? Single family homes out in Jersey or out in Delaware or out in Maryland or out in Georgia or out in you name it, Arizona. Like you're gonna spend that same 300 to 450, right? So let's again do the maths. If I own that home here in the U.S., let me see. If I own that home here in the U.S., that means that I've spent a minimum of 250,000 to $300,000. But we're gonna go with the 300 because we're not buying condos in New York. We're gonna go with the $300,000. If I own that here, I'm probably bringing in no more than 20, no more than 24, no 22,250 to 2,500. You're like 2,500 is probably gonna be on the high end. So let's do that conversion. 2,500 USD, 2,500 is what is it? 323,000 Kenyan shillings. And the building that I explained to you guys that I want to build, the same type of building, is bringing in. So let me rewind. If I own the property here and I'm getting high end market rates, let me not go with the high end. I'm gonna go with 2,250, 2,250, because that is on average like what people are paying. 2,250 is 291,000 Kenyan shillings. The building that I explained to you guys had 20 units. Let me actually give you the exact numbers. So 290 Kenyan shillings is what an American property would bring me. Let me do this math. 22 units times 12,000. And the reason we're going to go with the full 22 units being rented out is because here, in order for you to bring that full amount, you have to rent the home out and you only have one tenant. So I'm going to give the same specs for the one in Kenya. So 22 units times 12,000 brings me 264,000 Kenyan shillings. Just under 30,000 Kenyan shillings less. Maybe 30,000 Kenyan shillings is probably about $150 or $200, right? So I'm already spending more on the home here. Already spending more. I already told you guys that 300,000 is 40 million Kenyan shillings. The whole apartment building in Kenya costed no more than, what's it called? No more than 30 million Kenyan shillings, which was around $230,000. So for less money, I'm bringing in just about the same amount. It's just the difference is that one home here may bring me an extra $150 in income. But the reality is I'm not going to be able to buy a home here, just cash flat out, right? So I hope you guys understand the vision that I'm seeing and seeing the reality of it. If $230,000 in Kenya can bring me a return of 264,000 what's it called, Kenyan shillings, and that's not including the storefronts. If I was to add the extra 20,000, we're at 284,000 compared to 291,000. And here I've spent way more money to buy that single family home. There in Kenya, I've spent less money, and it's a more secure investment for the simple fact of one tenant versus 22 tenants. I'm gonna repeat that: one tenant versus 22 tenants, and I'm bringing in pretty much the same amount of money. Actually, more there because I've spent less. I hope you guys can wrap your head around the realities of property investment here compared to property investment in Kenya. Again, I'm going to repeat. Average home 300 to 450. Average down payment 56,000. That same 56,000 being 7 million Kenyan shillings is already generating me 500 and something dollars here, 550. That same down payment here, I'm only generating around $100 to $200, and I still have a monthly mortgage and the risk of my tenants moving out. This property here has one tenant. The property in Kenya has 22 tenants. I could have three people move out, six people move out, and I still haven't lost all my income. The second this one guy leaves, guess what? Jimmy now has to scramble and figure out, damn, where can I, what is it called? But overall, that's the big picture. I'm not going into this blind. I'm not going into this as some Kenyan American kid who thinks he's gonna go to Kenya and just make things work like that. No, I understand the realities of what it's gonna take to actually set myself up for good there. And like I said, if I'm generating that 284,000 Kenyan shillings with the full 22 units and two storefronts being rented out, the quality of life I can create for myself in Kenya is way higher than if I was to only have $2,500 here. Just to give you guys an understanding, let's assume I own both completely. If I'm to survive in America off of $2,500 because I have one home that I fully own and I have a tenant in there, just here in New York, I'm spending close to that, or if not that, on my monthly expenses. Just think about that. Just think about that. My monthly expenses here would eat up that whole what's it called, rental property income. But if I have 260 or 284,000 Kenyan shillings in Kenya, come on, y'all. Come on, y'all. I'd be living somewhere in CBD if I really wanted to. I'd be living so good because at the end of the day, these new high rises that are coming up, and you see like what's it called? You see these new high rises that are coming up, and you see they're so fancy. They have the glass, this, you have the balcony, and all of that. People aren't spending more than $1,200 to live in that. And just to convert this for you guys, the 264,000, that's without the storefronts, is around $2,038. Come on, $2,038. Or if I was to fully rent out the building, 284,000 is $2,193. Do you guys understand that when I go back to Kenya in a few weeks, like I'm buying my passport tonight. When I go back to Kenya in a few weeks, I'm not spending more than 20,000 Kenyan shillings on a apartment. Not even a full apartment. I'm literally gonna rent a simple behind studio for me to lock in and just focus because I do have to. I want to get some certifications, some tech certifications. That way, if I ever need a job in tech, I can easily find one. So while I'm in Kenya for the first few months, I'm gonna be head down, locked in, getting those tech certifications and everything. But I've already done my expenses and breakdown and everything. I'm not gonna spend more than $300 a month, and that's the place I plan on going to rent. Is a pretty decent place. It's not in the middle of the city, but $300 a month is 38,000 Kenyan shillings, 850. Let's call that 40,000 Kenyan shillings. For me to live in a simple studio there in Nairobi and pay my, what's it called, electric, pay my Safaricom home internet, I'm not spending more than 40,000 Kenyan shillings. And this is for me living on like a decent place that's not too expensive, that's not too cheap, that an actual American or foreigner would rent if they went to Kenya, but they're not trying to spend a lot of money. Like it's a decent place to live. So if 40,000 Kenyan shillings can give me that when I go back in a few months, what would 284,000 Kenyan shillings do for me? It would do a whole lot more. And with that type of income, let's say I do have the building built, right? Let's say that building is built and completed, and I'm not living in the building. I rent the same small place that I plan on renting when I go back. you subtract 40,000 from 264, 284, I still have an extra 200,000 Kenyan shillings. I can easily go into business and what's it called, and start investing and doing other things and start trying businesses, because if my monthly expenses are barely 40,000 Kenyan shillings and I have an extra 200,000, come on, like let's be serious. Let's be serious. I already gave you guys a few business ideas, and one of those business ideas was to go into boda bodas. I already told you guys that the boda boda I plan on buying, the electric one, costed about how much? It was like $1,400, right? $1,400. $1,400 is 181,000 Kenyan shillings. That means that with that building built, it can buy me one boda boda every month. Now, obviously, I'm gonna put some money away for taxes, right? But still, I would still have at least 200,000 Kenyan shillings. If I was to make 284, subtract 40 for my monthly expenses, living somewhere else cheaply, and take another 40,000 Kenyan shillings to pay for taxes at the end of the year, I'm still remaining with 200,000 Kenyan shillings. I'm able to buy one boda boda every month if I wanted to. I'm gonna end that right there. I hope you guys were able to keep along with the numbers. I may speak fast. I may be running through my ideas, but I want to give you guys a clear picture of what it takes to actually get into real estate here and get into real estate in Kenya, and why I see Kenya as the better, bigger opportunity. Because one tenant or 22, down payment and have a mortgage and loan that I have to worry about and stress about, a monthly mortgage, or down payment that actually gets me land where I own and I have 6 units. I'm gonna stop right there. That's the end of this video. If you guys have any questions, drop them in the comments. If you guys have any insights or anything that you would like to understand, also drop that in the comments. And like I said, I'm not going into this blindly. I have enough people around me, close to me and connected to me, that I have guidance along this path. I have my dad who's already started building his own apartments in our old shamba. So I have that to look from. And I have my uncle who's actually a developer who's done that. At the same time, I'm not going to Kenya to build what's it called? How we traditionally build. There's a lot more new building technologies that are out right now. For example, what's that guy on YouTube? His name is, I can't remember his name. Property Noma. That's his name on YouTube. You guys should go check his page out. Property Noma. He's showing the modern building practices that people are using to not build traditionally. So traditionally you would put slabs with and spend a lot of money on rebar and stuff. He's showing how people are using prefabricated concrete pillars and whatever. And then there's also twist blocks that don't require what's it called, mortar. You know, when you stack bricks, you have to put mortar between each layer. That's painful labor. Nowadays, there's these things called twist blocks where you can dry stack them. There's also the beam and block technology where instead of having to pour a whole slab, there's these concrete beams that you put on two strong pillars or foundations, and then you put blocks in between that are held up, and that's your slab. And then once you do the beam and block, all you have to do is put a thin layer of concrete on top. I'm getting into the weeds. That's probably a video for another day, but I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope it gave you guys an insight into what I see. I have no problem sharing this because I would rather most Kenyans put their money back in Kenya. I love y'all. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.